Hello and a warm welcome to everyone joining us today. I hope you're having a fantastic day so far. I'm so excited to introduce you to something that's going to revolutionize the way you manage your Microsoft network infrastructure, whether you're an IT admin, a network manager, or someone responsible for the smooth operation of your organization's digital infrastructure. Today's session is tailored just for you. As we all know, managing distributed Microsoft Windows DNS and DHCP clusters can be a complex and time consuming task, especially when your infrastructure is spread across multiple locations. But what if you could manage all of that from a single centralized interface? Well, that's exactly what we're here to demonstrate today. Allow me to introduce you to DDI Central, a cutting edge solution that brings everything together into one cohesive system so you can seamlessly manage your distributed Microsoft Windows DNS and DHCP clusters from a single window, making your network management not only more efficient but also more intuitive. Very quick introduction. My name is Akshara, product expert from ManageEngine, and I'm thrilled to be a host for today's session. I collaborate closely with the marketing teams for ManageEngine DDI Central and Cloud DNS. A big part of what I do is talk about the critical network services like DNS, DHCP, and IPAM. Today, I'm here to address Microsoft Windows Server users around the globe and share insights on how DDI Central simplifies network management for IT infrastructures using Microsoft DNS and DHCP servers, offering unmatched convenience and efficiency. As for the agenda today, first we'll start with a brief introduction to DDI Central. This will give you a foundational understanding of the platform and its key capabilities. Next, we'll explore managing large-scale remote sites via agentless connection with WinRM setup. So you'll see how DDI Central simplifies the process, making it easier to manage even the most complex network environments. Then we'll move on to the DNS manager, where we'll cover the DNS zone editor, granular DNS query control, and centralized management of third-party zones. This will highlight how DDI Central gives you fine-grained control over your DNS infrastructure. Following that, we'll discuss the DHCP Manager. We'll look at how you can implement network segmentation with DHCP Scope Manager, configure DHCP options, and set up DHCP policies. This section will demonstrate the flexibility and power of DDI Central in managing your DHCP services. We'll also delve into the IP Address Manager. Here, we'll show you how DDI Central enables dual stack IP inventory management, provides IP lease history insights, and facilitate IP host identity mapping, ensuring you have complete visibility over your IP resources. We'll touch on the built-in auditing and failover support provided by DDI Central. This will illustrate how the platform ensures reliability and continuity in your network operations. Lastly, we'll wrap up with a look at scheduled DNS and DHCP reports. You'll see how easy it is to automate reporting, ensuring you always have the information you need at your fingertips. Let's get started. Look at the image here. It's a visual metaphor for the daily life of a network administrator managing DNS, DHCP, and IPAM with disparate tools. The person balancing precariously on the ball is your network administrator, who has to constantly keep numerous balls in the air, juggling tools for tasks like assigning IP addresses, updating DNS records, managing DHCP settings, and ensuring network reliability and security all at once. I hope this image likely resonates with many of you. It's a tedious balancing act that requires high precision, agility, and above all, an incredible amount of time and effort. The risk of dropping a single ball is high. And what about the consequences? Well, they could range from minor disruptions to major network outages, impacting your organization's operations and productivity. Look at the desktop UI here. So this is the native Microsoft desktop UI that you get along with your Windows Server OS. So here's where your network admins manage all the DNS and DHCP servers. So this desktop graphical user interface is accessible directly on the server and provides a structured view of all configured policies. The desktop UI requires manual configurations for many settings, which increases the administrative burden, particularly in larger environments where consistency and automation are crucial. But look how cluttered it becomes when the volume of your configurations tend to grow. Before we jump into the demo, let's look at the current challenges in managing Microsoft DNS and DHCP clusters via the native Windows tools like the desktop UI. Firstly, time-consuming manual configurations are a major pain point. Without automated processes, admins often spend hours manually configuring DNS and DHCP settings across servers, which can be especially daunting in large or complex environments. Secondly, there's the issue of lack of consistency in configurations. When settings are applied manually across multiple servers or clusters, there's always a risk of inconsistencies, which can lead to network issues, downtime, or security vulnerabilities. Another significant challenge is the lack of centralized control in environments without Active Directory or the AD. Without Active Directory, administrators have to manage each server's policies separately, which can lead to inconsistencies and increased management overhead, especially in larger environments. As there's no unified platform to manage all the DNS and DHCP settings, it becomes difficult to maintain a cohesive and organized network infrastructure. For those using Windows Desktop UI, limited automation is another hurdle. The native tools don't provide robust automation capabilities, meaning admins must repeatedly perform tasks that could otherwise be streamlined. Additionally, there's the challenge of limited reporting and analytics. The native tools offer basic reporting at best, which can make it difficult to gain quick insights into network performance, identify threats, and or troubleshoot issues frequently and effectively. To carry out complex and large-scale automations, your network admins need more than just basic skills. They must be PowerShell ninjas with exemplary abilities in scripting to manage these environments effectively. Many tasks, particularly those involving PowerShell scripts or command line tools, require a high level of expertise that not all admins possess, which can lead to slower response times and an increased likelihood of errors. Finally, we have remote management dependence. When managed via the desktop UI, continuous visibility of configurations across different servers in the cluster requires the use of command line tools like PowerShell and the remote management protocol WinRM, which must be manually executed at frequent intervals. The Windows UI provides basic troubleshooting tools, but they may not be sufficient for diagnosing and resolving issues across large or complex environments. Admins often have to rely on additional tools or scripts to get detailed diagnostics and logs. This can get more challenging and might delay responses to security incidents. These challenges highlight the need for a more streamlined, automated, and centralized solution for managing DNS and DHCP clusters, something that can ease the burden on IT teams while ensuring consistency and reliability across the network. Manage Engine DDI Central is one such solution that brings all the core network services, DNS, DHCP, and IPAM together so that it narrows down your admin's focus to one single window. So what is DDI in DDI Central? It is the integration of the core network services. So it tightly integrates These three services, domain name system or the DNS, dynamic host configuration protocol or the DHCP, and IP address management, which is also known as IPAM. A comprehensive solution like DDI Central combines the management of your network services like DNS, DHCP, and IPAM into one application. So you can manage your DNS infrastructure, DHCP infrastructure, and automate the IP address management for these services, all from a central management console. Now let's turn our attention to how things improve after deploying DDI Central. With DDI Central, the first major advantage is centralized visibility and management. Instead of juggling multiple consoles or interfaces, you have a single pane of glass where you can monitor and manage all your DNS, DHCP, and IPAM services across the network. This consolidation not only simplifies the administrative workload, but also significantly reduces the chances of errors. Next, synchronized configurations becomes a reality. With DDI Central, changes made to network configurations are automatically synchronized to the centralized DDI management console UI. This ensures consistency and eliminates the discrepancies that often arise in large distributed environments. The key benefit is policy standardization. With DDI Central. You can implement uniform policies with consistent configurations across the entire network infrastructure, ensuring that security and operational standards are consistently applied. And here's a big win for the team: ease of use. With DDI Central, you don't need advanced skills or deep expertise in scripting to manage your network effectively. The platform is designed to be intuitive, allowing even entry level system administrators to handle complex network tasks with confidence. Finally, easily setting up complex automations is a breeze. Whether it's automating DNS, DHCP, or IP address management tasks, DDI Central makes it simple to implement and manage these automations. This not only saves time, but also enhances the overall efficiency and reliability of your network operations. Let's see the core functions of DDI Central. DDI Central enables you to take complete control and gain holistic as well as deeper visibility into the configurations of the three services DNS, DHCP, and IPAM. With the DDI solution, you can easily define and manage scopes, dynamically lease IP addresses to hosts, set up custom DHCP device fingerprinting policies, manage DNS zones, zone scopes, and records, set up DNS security policies, analyze DNS query traffic, review audit logs, manage dual stack IP address inventories of your network, all through a single window. To get started with DDI Central, you'll have to download Management UI Console from our downloads page. So when you go to our downloads page, you'll have to download this Management UI Console. You can skip this Discovery Node agent. Since we follow agentless connection and communication, you can skip the Discovery Node agent over here, and it's sufficient if you just download the Management UI Console alone. So this runs only on Linux environments. So in case if you want to run it on a Windows environment, you can just download the ISO live ISO image over here. So this is based on Debian OS. So you can download this ISO image and use virtual machines. At DDI, you can run DDI Central as a virtual machine via bare metal, VMware, KVM, Hyper-V, and other hypervisors. So that's it. And having a WinRM setup is mandatory. So as you can see, this ensures continuous visibility of your services, and it keeps your services in sync with each other. So if you have WinRM setup established already in your network infrastructure, that would be perfect. So even if you don't, just follow the instructions we have in our user guide. So you can run these commands and you can easily establish WinRM authentication. And DDI Central manages Microsoft DNS and DHCP servers running on Windows Server OS versions 2016, 2019, and 2022. So even if you have the console running on 2019 and if you have your DNS servers running in version 2022, we have seamless reverse and forward compatibility. So you don't have to worry about the differences in the OS versions. We take care of that, so you don't have to worry about it. So yeah, it's just that simple. Diagram you see on screen depicts a typical Windows network infrastructure managed via DDI Central. The two remote branch office DNS DHCP clusters communicate with the DDI console via WinRM protocol, ensuring continuous visibility. So as I mentioned before, WinRM setup is required in your infrastructure. So please establish the WinRM setup if you haven't in your Windows infrastructure. DDI Central's unified interface serves as a single point of management for all the distributed remote branch networks of your distributed Microsoft network. With the DDI solution, you can easily manage the DNS, DHCP, and IPAM configurations of each remote branch. As you onboard all your DNS and DHCP servers of a branch, as a particular cluster in DDI Central. So each remote site can be managed as a separate cluster in DDI Central. So when you onboard your servers into a particular cluster, it starts discovering all the configurations on a granular level to consolidate, catalog, and correlate the configurations, facilitating a contextualized visibility. With all the configurations organized in its UI, you can easily control your core network services and make required amends to them. Analyze the rich visual analytics that accompany each module to get quick visual snapshots to arrive at valuable insights that guide you with quick troubleshooting. You can also schedule reports that help you track subnet IP utilization patterns and query resolution patterns for effective capacity planning. DDI Central also offers a single unified interface to manage DNS zones hosted across various third-party providers or cloud vendors. This centralized approach simplifies DNS management, reducing the need to navigate multiple interfaces and streamlining operations. Let's get into the demo. So as you can see, DDI Central's UI is so simple. So it has got a pared back navigation that places the essential fields right in front of you, eliminating unnecessary clutter. So let's get into any particular module. You will see that adding a particular configurations or making amends to it, it is quite easy in DDI Central. So it guides you through the most relevant parts, ensuring you can can easily find your configurations without digging deep in search of them. With the right level of built-in validation for each field, admins are guided to make error-free configurations, significantly reducing the time consumed. DDI Central transforms the way you manage your network, making it more streamlined, consistent, and user-friendly. It empowers your IT team to focus on strategic initiatives rather than getting bogged down by manual configurations and troubleshooting. By deploying a full stack DDI solution like DDI Central, you can now streamline not just tasks, but the whole procedure behind incorporating a user device dynamically into a targeted network, reducing complexity and significantly lowering the risk of human error. So let's start by creating the clusters. So on first sign up, you'll witness an empty dashboard. So to get started, you'll have to create a cluster. So clusters are logical arrangements. So clusters are logical groupings of servers, DNS, DHCP, or both, organized for identification and administrative purposes. These clusters operate independently of other clusters configured within DDI Central. Each cluster you add has its own internalized IP address space, IP inventory, IP address plans, IP address manager, DHCP manager, DNS manager. A single cluster can accommodate any number of DNS servers and DHCP servers. So you can add each remote site of yours as a separate cluster in DDI Central. So to create a new cluster, just click on the add icon over here, name the cluster, select the type of the servers you're going to accommodate in this cluster, and then you can click on save. Here you'll also mention the type of the OS in this cluster. So if you create so there will be an extra field. So let me show it over here. So if you're creating a new cluster, it'll ask you for the name, the type of the servers in the cluster, and you'll have to choose the operating system in this particular cluster. So for our Microsoft network infrastructure, you can choose Windows over here and you can save the configurations and a new cluster will be created. So automatically after you create a cluster, DDI Central will prompt you to onboard your servers in the cluster. So for this, you'll be taken to the add server page. Here you'll have to enter the essential details of the server, like the server IP, the username and password credentials, for DDI Central Console to communicate with the remote server and feed in all the port details and all the encryption protocols as such. And here comes the crucial part where you'll have to specify whether you are discovering the configurations or not. So if you choose both, as shown on screen, so it will quickly fetch the DNS and DHCP details in the particular server. So you can choose both if you'd like to discover all those configurations. So once you click save, the discovery process will start. The discovery process tends to vary depending upon the volume of configurations. And if you'd like to discover only the DNS configurations, you can choose DNS only or DHCP only for discovering only the DHCP configurations. And if you choose no, you can just onboard the server. But DDI Central gives you an interesting option wherein you can migrate all the DNS zones or all the DNS domains existing in the cluster. Suppose if this is the first server you're onboarding, it will not show you this option. But if you have 3 or 4 clusters, if you have one or more DNS servers in the cluster, and it will ask you the option to whether if you'd like to migrate the domains already existing in the servers in this particular cluster. So you can give, if you'd like to migrate all the domains, you can just give all, and You can specify if this server is going to act as the primary name server or the secondary name server for all these migrated domains. And you can selectively migrate the domains as well. But the thing is, you'll have to specify for which domains this particular server is going to act as primary name server, and the selected specific domains for which it is going to act as secondary. And you can save the configurations. The domains will be migrated into this particular new server. So once the server is onboarded, you can use the DDI Central's interface to make updates to the configurations in the server. So you can set up new DNS and DHCP configurations, and you can manage the server as such. So once you add this server here, once it is successfully onboarded, you can see it is listed over here, and you can perform several actions like change the credentials, and you can monitor the vital stats of the server like disk usage, memory usage, CPU usage. And if all is well, you can see that the service is up and running over here. And then you can edit the server configurations and delete the server configurations. So once you've onboarded your servers, you'll have to onboard your users. And you can add your users over here, enter the essential details, their name, email, and everything. And you can also enable TOTP authentication for them. And you can assign a specific role for them. So DDI Central offers two roles, admin and operator. Admin does not have any restriction at all, but for an operator, you can give them limited scopes. Like if you choose an operator role for a user, you'll have to specify for which clusters this particular operator has access to. So select a cluster, and then you'll have to specify if the operator has access to only DNS configurations, DHCP configuration, or DNS, DHCP, and IP address management as a whole. So in that case, you'll have to choose DDI, or you can choose one of the three options over here. So if you want to restrict their scope to a particular set of zones in your cluster, you can select the particular zones in that particular cluster. So you can selectively choose a few zones, or if you'd like to give them access to all the zones, just select all and add an entry. This way you can add their limitations for each cluster, and you can save the configurations. So this is how you control access for your users. And we have the user audit page where you can see the entry and exit details with all those user audit logs. For this elevates the security posture of your network infrastructure. And then you configure the SMTP host. So this is very much crucial. So just click on the configure SMTP host and provide all the necessary details, the from address, the SMTP, the fully qualified domain name of your mail server, and you can enable authentication if required. And then you can move on to configuring single sign-on. So if you have an accounts with an identity provider like Okta, Ping, and so many such popular identity service providers, you can upload the certificates that you get from them, their unique identifier, and the SSO URL just into the DDI Central's user interface, and you can configure SAML authentication, and you can simplify the login process for all your users. You can group your users into particular contact groups. So when you create a new contact group, you'll have to specify the email addresses of the group, or you can specify the email addresses of each and every user in the contact group. And then you select the cluster to which this contact group has to be added. So any vital email notification will be sent from the configured email ID, from email ID that you got to see in the SMTP menu. So from that, from mail address, all those vital email notifications will be sent to the contact group, to the emails specified in the contact group. And you can save the configurations. That's about the initial setup configurations. And then let's move on to the DNS manager module. So when your domains are properly discovered, they'll be listed over here in the domains menu. And here you can create a new domain using the add domain button, enter all the essential name server details, and you can specify the primary and multiple secondary name servers for a particular domain. And you can also create zone scopes. So here, when you specify a name and click on the add button, you create new zone scopes for a particular domain. And if you'd like to enable dynamic DNS configurations, so dynamic DNS configurations wherein the IP address for the records that are part of the domain you create are leased out by the DHCP server. So in this case, there's automated IP address updates. So you'll have to choose the type of the DHCP service that is going to update the IP address. So if it's going to be a DHCP v4 service or v6 service, you'll have to select the option and you can save the configurations. So that's how you create new domains. And if you have a lot of domains that you've kept undiscovered, so you can click on the import button over here. You can import all those domains using a zip file, and you can select the server that is going to act as the primary name server for those imported domains and the secondary server for those imported domains, and click on import. All those domains will be imported in bulk to the DDI Central user interface. And to access the records, just click on the domain name and you will get to access all the records under that particular domain name. So these are the type of records that DDI Central supports. And just navigate to the record type and click on the add icon over here. You can enter all the record details. You can configure the responses for each record. And then if you'd like to sign any DNS, a particular domain, you can click on the DNS sec icon. So this is, so it'll automatically generate the keys. You can unsign it whenever you want. And if you'd like to import various DNS records, you can import them in a bind file format. So we also have an export button over here, which will help you export it as a text file. And then once you start, so for each zone scope, you'll have the scope name mentioned over here under the scope column. So you can see this is the original domain and these are the zone scopes, which has customized records for this particular domain name. Using query resolution policies, you can serve these customized versions for different network segments, for different clients. So you can customize them using query resolution policies. So once you're done with the domains, once you start managing your domains with DDI Central continuously captures all your actions and it lists out the audit logs. So it maintains a thorough audit trail where you can see who has done what around what time, and you can go through the audit trails and you can compile them and you can submit for compliance or regulatory requirements. So all you have to do is select the particular domain or record that you're searching for and then submit all the audit logs pertaining to that particular domain. And then we have the analytics menu where you have access to interesting information. So we'll get into the DNS manager module. So since the cluster is empty, it's prompting you to onboard the server first. That's why it's showing you the message. So let's get into the Win cluster 2 and get into the DNS manager. Here you have so many other zones. And we'll get into the analytics menu. So we'll have some key performance indicators like queries per second and total queries and the hourly query load for all the domains in your DNS infrastructure. This includes the query counts for even the non-hosted domains. And if you'd like to specifically view the query counts and the key performance indicators for all the hosted domains. Especially, you can choose the hosted domains and you can see the query analytics for it. And you can customize the time window over here. And you can also view the query analytics for zone scopes or even the blocked domains that you have blocked using DNS firewalls. And so yeah, you can view the query analytics for it. And then you can choose a particular domain name and you can access the query analytics for that particular domain name. And these stats are meant exclusively for this particular domain name. And so the lease IP information and all the metadata associated with this IP is that this particular IP is associated with this particular domain name, and hence you get to see all those um, lease data associated with that particular IP over time. So as you can see, so these were the IPs trying to query this particular domain name, and you have a visual breakdown of the number of queries from each IP address in a donut plot. And then you can see the type of records accessed by these IPs in a visual donut plot. So you can see the type of records that were accessed by the IPs. So you can see which records were in demand. So you'll have a complete visual breakdown of it. And then you can, so that's about the analytics module. So you can have access to all those key performance indicators. And then comes the config menu, where you'll have some crucial as well as supplementary configurations. So here you can create a DNS client subnet. So you can define different network segments. You can create named network segments, like you can enter the list of IPv4 subnets and v6 subnets and categorize them with a particular name. And these can be applied when you're applying query resolution policies. This will be of great use when you're configuring specialized policies to have a granular control or customize the query resolutions. And then you can configure the policies. So first, we'll be configuring the DNS firewall policies. You can enter the name of the domain that you'd like to block using DNS firewall. So we have a DNS block list over here. So when you add your domains one by one, it will get added up into the block list. So if you'd like to, if you're unaware of the number of subdomains for a particular domain, you can just click on block subdomains and it will be added to this particular list in the right side. And if you'd like to create a new category, you can specify the domain name and create a category name, enter a category name, and click on the add button over here. Or if you have a list of undesirable domains or malicious domains, just click on, and you want to import them in bulk, use this option over here. Just click on the import as CSV button over here, and you can import them in bulk into the block list over here. And we also maintain a standard list of undesirable domains. So if depending on your industry or scope of work, you can include the one or multiple teams are already compiled over here. And then you can, so that's about DNS firewall. All these, whenever a client from your internal network, they try to access this particular domains from the block list, they will not be able to access this particular domain. And whenever they try to access, you'll be informed here in the analytics module. So if you get into the block domains, if you select block domains over here, you'll get to see who was the host trying to access the one of the entries in the block domain. So you can easily identify that. And next comes the query resolution policies. You can create new query resolution policies. You can name the policy, select the criteria, whether you're going to allow or deny or ignore, and you can choose the conditional operator, and you can combine this conditional operator with multiple criteria. So if you have a set of different criteria, and you can use multiple criteria to be combined with a particular conditional operator. So you can specify the client subnet. So this has to be defined before, and you can select one of the defined client subnets. And if you have a particular fully qualified domain name for which the customized this policy should apply to, so you can specify the fully qualified domain name of the particular domain, and then you can select the time around which this policy should get applied to. And you can just click on the clock icon over here and select the time, and then click on the add button over here. So the entry will be created. And if you'd like to customize the response for a particular query type, so if you'd like to apply this policy for all the queries for A records to your DNS infrastructure, you can very well do it. And then you can choose the internet protocol, whether it's going to be IPv4 or V6. So you can customize the responses based on the IP addresses that are accessing a particular domain or particular domain in your DNS infrastructure. You can choose the particular transport protocol. So these are the various criteria to circumvent these query resolution policies from it's mainly like creating an exception list. So for this, you will have to specify the criteria as well. So these particular clients will be exempted from this particular policy. So you can save the configurations, and then you can, in case of a DNS amplification attacks, you can create response rate limiting settings. So let's see the various configurations that you'll have to configure for limiting the responses or truncating the responses when you encounter an ongoing amplification attack. So make sure you enter the relevant information like responses per second. This is the maximum number of responses the DNS server is allowed to send to a single IP that is bombarding your DNS infrastructure with an overwhelming bunch of records. So setting this to 5 means only 5 responses per second for the particular IP address. And for the errors per second, these are the maximum number of error responses the DNS server can send to a single IP address. So setting this to 5 means up to 5 error responses per second for the IP address. And you can specify the time window in seconds over which the responses are counted. Setting this to 6 means the DNS server will count the responses over a 6-second time window. And you can specify the IPv4 or V6 prefix length used for rate limiting. Setting this to 24 and 56 means rate limiting will apply to all those network segments with /24 and /56 subnets. Yeah, so the source IPs with /24 and /56 subnets will be will have a truncated DNS responses, and you can specify the leak rate at which the excess responses are allowed to leak, through even when the limit is exceeded. So setting this to 3 means that every third excess response will be allowed through. And for truncate response, mention the rate at which the excess response at which the responses are truncated. So when the limit is exceeded, setting this to 2 means that every second excess response will be truncated. And you can mention, you can specify the maximum number of responses allowed within the specified time window. So if setting this to 1024 means a maximum of 1024 responses per window per IP address. So these are the crucial configurations for setting up the RRL policies, and you can enable or disable it and can based on your requirements. So you can activate or deactivate it whenever required. You can exempt certain trusted clients from these RRL policies. So you can create an RRL exception list, name the RRL exception policy, specify the conditional operator, and specify to whom this exception policy should apply to by specifying the client subnet or specifying the fully qualified domain name to which the exception policy must apply to, and for those who for whom this exception list should be denied. So you can just make the configurations over here, and then you can specify the DNS forwarders. In case you configure recursion settings for your DNS infrastructure using the fields over here, you can specify the DNS forwarders. It's this, you can't skip this step, and you'll have to specify the DNS forward list. So whenever the resolver queries a domain that is not part of its DNS infrastructure, it immediately forwards the query to the forwarder IP addresses in the forwarder list. So it based on the timeout seconds that you mentioned here, it will wait for 8 seconds for the first IP to take the request. If it does not, it will jump over to the next forwarder IP. So that's how the forwarder works. And you can finally manage all those third-party DNS records. So you'll have to choose the provider over here. You'll have to give all the essential authentication information, like all the API credentials over here. And once you've established successful authentication, it will list out all the domains that you manage with this provider. And you can, once you click migrate, so all those domains will be migrated into the domains page. So here you can manage all those DNS records. Any change, even a small configurational change that you make over here, will be reflected on your name servers with this particular provider. So even if you'd like to create a new domain, you can very well do so by enabling this toggle, and you can select the zone name and DNS zone name, and these information will be directly updated with your cloud vendor. So we have 4 providers over here. So you can manage all those records zones from DDI Central. So you have a centralized DNS management. So this eliminates the need for multiple interfaces. So you can have DDI Central as the unified interface to manage all your DNS records. So all those complex configurations, like in some routing policies and filters that you set up with these providers, cannot be accessed or managed through DDI Central. It's only meant for record management and domain management. So you can see only these configurations over here. All those complex configurations cannot be accessed through DDI Central's user interface. So we have a scavenging option over here. You'll have to configure the scavenging rules. So you can configure the scavenging period. So if you say 30 days, you search for, when you set up this scavenging, it searches for stale records that have been inactive for 30 days, and it will search for TXT records that have been stale or inactive for 90 days. And when you choose a particular schedule interval, it will do this whole search on a weekly or monthly basis. So you can select the domains upon which this schedule has to be activated, and you can save the configurations. Once you've configured the scavenging schedule, it will generate reports on a weekly and monthly basis. So depending on that, you'll get to access all those DNS scavenging records. So you can delete them, or you can reclaim those records. So if you want to so if you're not okay with the schedule, if you just want your to scavenge all those inactive records now, you can just click on scavenge now, and it'll just initiate the scavenging process for the configured domains now. So that's about the scavenging processes, and you can schedule DNS reports. So just click on schedule and you'll configure schedule DNS reports. So once you create a new schedule by specifying the frequency. So if it's going to be daily, weekly, or monthly, and you can retain backed up reports. So if you'd like to, the scope of the reports is decided, like So when you click on the schedule, so you can create a new schedule by selecting the type. So whether you want to create the reports for all the domains or selected domains. So the contents in the report will be the query resolution, query analytics for a particular domain. You can have timely access to it, and you can compare the query analytics at different points of time. So you can easily detect the amplification attacks bombarding your DNS servers. So you can see for selective domains or for all the domains in your DNS infrastructure, in your cluster especially. And then you can select the domains in the cluster selectively. And if you'd like to back up the reports, you just enable this option and select the number of versions. So if you choose 5 over here, it will back up the latest 5 versions of the DNS reports. So you can easily get to compare and analyze the previous versions, and you can see if there are any looming issues under when it comes to queries that reach your DNS servers in the cluster. So that's about the reports. So we've covered almost all the aspects of the DNS manager. And coming to the quickly to the DHCP manager, you can segment your network as subnets, multicast subnets, static subnets, supernets, shared network, and VLANs. So supernet and VLAN will not be discovered during the discovery process. They are just meant only for simplifying the network administration. And if you'd like to create a new subnet, just click on add subnet and specify the scope name, network address, and all the essential details. Specify the DHCP server on which this particular subnet should be created. And then you can that is going to draw the IP addresses from this subnet, and then you can specify if failover should be configured for this subnet, and then you'll have to choose the primary and secondary DHCP server, and then you can select the scope of this particular subnet, whether it's going to be on the global level or it is going to be assigned under a particular shared network. So if you'd like to temporarily deactivate or activate this subnet, you can do so with the state toggle, and you can limit or give infinite lease duration using the options over here. So if you're going to limit the lease duration, just specify the lease duration over here, and you can specify the IP address ranges that the address pools that will be from which the DHCP server will draw IP addresses from. So based on the range you give here, DHCP server selects those particular IP addresses within the range. It does not go beyond the range. And you can also specify the exclusion range. And then you can, if this particular subnet is, if you want to create a new VLAN atop this subnet, you can just also specify the new VLAN details. Or if you want to associate this particular subnet to an already existing VLAN, you can just enable that. And then you can assign DHCP options, select the particular vendor class, and you'll have access to all the options under the vendor class. And you can select the particular option and you can specify the value over here, and you can assign custom options. If you have complex configurations, just select a vendor class and select the custom option over here. In the further segment, we'll discuss how you can add a definition for a custom option. And then if you've enabled DDNS settings for this under this particular subnet, you can customize the dynamic updates. So you can choose if you'd like to dynamically update for only those on always dynamically update the DNS records under this subnet, and on a client request, or you can skip this off. You can have all these options configured. So this basically customizes the DDNS responses. So you can enable them if you'd like, and then you can save the configurations. So multicast subnets are meant for broadcasts. So you can just create them, and this is same as such for creating an ordinary subnet. You'll have to specify the lease duration, exclusion range, and everything. And you give the time to live value for this particular multicast subnet. And you specify if it's going to have an infinite lifetime, or you can set the expiry for this particular multicast subnet. And you can save the configurations. And you can create static subnet, and you can import static leases for essential devices like routers, switches, and other access points. You can create static subnets, and you can import your static leases. The DDI Central recognizes those static leases, so you can import them as a CSV file, and then you can see that those DDI Central recognizes that, and places them in an exclusive range. So yeah, that's about the static subnets. And you can, to hierarchically organize your subnets in a tree-like structure, you'll have to define a super subnet and keep on adding subnets under these particular supernets. So all you have to do is specify the address, prefix, and select the subnets that come under this particular supernet. You can also group specific static subnets under a particular supernet, and then you can create a shared network. Suppose, so all those subnets that share the same physical network segment but are logically separated, you can create a shared network. You can name the shared network and specify the subnets that share the same physical network segment, and you can assign them to a particular DHCP server. So that's about the shared network. And for creating VLANs, as we already saw that it's built top subnets. So select the particular subnet upon which you want to create the new VLAN. You'll have to supply all those essential information like VLAN ID and VLAN name. And then once your VLAN is created, it will be displayed over here. As you can see over here, all the subnets, multicast subnet, static subnets, and all those static leases can be viewed over here. So at last, we have the policies. So just click on add policy to create a new policy. Just name your policy and specify the DHCP server over which this policy should be applied. And then you can assign it, you can select the scope for this policy, whether it's going to be for a specific subnet or it's going to be on a global level, universally applying to all the clients. And you can temporarily activate or deactivate it, and you can specify the lease duration for this particular policies. For all the clients that qualify for this policy, this particular lease duration will be applied, and you can select the conditional operator that combines various criteria and creates a suitable condition for the clients, filtering out the clients in your network. So you'll have, once you choose the condition operator, you'll have to define the condition. For this, you'll have to specify the criteria. The criteria, we have different options for the criteria. These are the portions in the DHCP packets of the client. So if you'd like to target a MAC address, or if you like to target a particular vendor class, you can just do that by selecting the relevant criteria, and you can choose the comparing operators like equals, not equals, as a single label, not a single label. So you can choose the relevant operator, and then you can specify the values that matches the particular. So a specific, if you're in search of a specific value or a set of values that the criteria will be compared against, enter the appropriate values based on the selected criteria. So this provides the data that will be used to evaluate whether the condition is met or not. So you can use wildcard options to search for specific patterns within the DHCP packet. So you can use prefix wildcard or append wildcard, and then you can add the values. So this is how you create DHCP policies. And for each policy, you can have its own version of DHCP options, custom options, and DDNS settings. So you can save the policies, and all those clients that qualify for this particular policy will have all these configurations. So that's about the DHCP policies. In order to create DHCP reservations, just click on Add Host. Host in DDI Central is nothing but DHCP reservations. Like in the shared network is something in Windows call it as super scopes, and DHCP for the ones that DHCP Windows DHCP calls it as DHCP reservations is named as hosts in DDI Central. So if you'd like to create DHCP reservations, you can name them, enter their specific MAC address, enter the specific MAC address of the host, and you can assign them under a particular subnet, and you can assign the fixed IP for the host, and you can assign specific DHCP custom options or DNS settings for this particular host. So that's how you create the host. And for all the DHCP objects that your DHCP server manages, so all the DHCP server objects managed under this particular cluster, it captures the audit trails. Suppose if you would like to present the audit logs for a particular network segment or a subnet, you can just select the subnet of your choice, and then you can present the audit logs. So this becomes so easy when you, instead of presenting the audit logs of the whole network infrastructure, you can selectively choose a particular object, and you can present the audit trails for that particular segment in your network. And for the configurations, you can configure DHCP failover configurations over here. So in order to create a new failover configuration, you can name the failover configuration, assign the primary and secondary DHCP servers, and you can select the subnet for which the failover configuration is to be configured. And there are two modes available: hot standby, which is more like an active passive. So if the primary DHCP server fails, only then the secondary DHCP server takes over. So that's hot standby. And for load balance, both the servers share the load for redundancy and high availability. So if you choose load balance and give a proper percentage, so if you give 50, both the primary and the secondary servers will share the equal loads, and they'll start leasing out IP addresses. And you need to enter the shared secret for message authentication in order to secure the communications between the failover partners. And so in order to as the primary and secondary DHCP servers, so for the secondary DHCP server to stay alert, we have this state switch interval. So this interval specifies the time interval for which the DHCP server should continue to operate in the communication interrupted mode before transitioning to the partner down state. Suppose if the secondary DHCP server will for example, if you've specified 300 seconds over here, the secondary DHCP server will wait for 300 seconds even if the primary DHCP server goes down. So it will maintain a connection interrupted mode, and only after these 300 seconds, it will receive the partner down state. So only after these 300 seconds, if it does not receive any message from the primary DHCP server, the secondary server is informed that the primary is down and it has to take over, whether be it a hot standby mode or load balance mode. So this type of automatic transition happens between the primary and the secondary server. So for the maximum client lead time, specify the maximum amount of time that the primary server can extend a DHCP lease for a client without getting confirmation or acknowledgement from the other server. So the purpose of MCLT is to prevent conflicts between the two servers and to ensure that they remain synchronized in their information about which IP addresses are leased to which clients. So that's about the DHCP failover configurations. And we have something called DHCP filtering, wherein you select a server, particular DHCP server, and enter the MAC addresses that you would like to allow leases from this particular DHCP server. So if you put a particular MAC address in the deny list, this particular MAC address will be denied IP addresses, will be denied leases from this particular DHCP server. So in that way, you can filter the MAC addresses, that which are allowed for a particular DHCP server and that which are denied for a particular DHCP server. And you can create classes. Classes are nothing but they just group options together. And to create a new class, name the class and select the type of the class, whether it's going to be a vendor specific, device specific set of options, or it's going to be a user specific information. So you can just specify it over here, and you can specify the type of the data you'll be looking out whenever you apply this vendor class. So you can specify specify the type of the data that you look for in the DHCP packet. So that's how you create the class. So we have different classes over here. And for the dynamic DNS settings, as you saw in different scope levels, so you can customize the dynamic DNS responses, and then you can select the vendor class and choose the options. So all the configurations that you get to configure under the config menu, these are all universal options. These are meant for all the servers in the cluster. So so the ones you get to once you got to see under the subnet or multicast subnets, they are limited to that particular scope level. But the ones you configure over here, it's universal and meant for all the servers in the cluster. So when you, whatever options you configure here, it will be consistently applied to all the servers in the cluster. So you can select a particular vendor class and you can select the option, specify the value, and that particular option will be applied for all the servers in the cluster. And you can also create custom options. So the only place where you will define the custom option is over here, and only if you define it over here, you'll be able to access it at specific scope levels. So you can select the vendor class, and then you will have to click on the add icon to define the particular custom option. So you can specify the data type, if it's going to be multi-valued and everything, and you can specify the option ID, and then you can give it, assign it under a particular vendor class, and that's how custom options are created. And then you can apply the relevant option value, and then you can globally apply it for all the servers in your cluster. So this is how the DHCP configurations are, some crucial and supplementary configurations for DHCP servers are configured. And you can also schedule DHCP reports. The contents of the reports in for DHCP servers would include subnet IP utilization capabilities, capacities. So you can create a new report, and you can specify the frequency. And for the DHCP reports, just click on, so we'll log in as admin, and you'll, so if the scope of these reports is going to be a specific subnet or all the subnets in the DHCP or in the cluster. So you can choose DHCP option, and you can create a schedule, specify the frequency. Is it going to be all subnet report or specific subnet lease report? So you can select the specific subnet, and you can see the IP utilization stats for these particular subnets in this frequency. You can schedule them in such a frequency that you'll get to compare the IP utilization capacities of these subnets from time to time. And you can also back up these reports. So you'll have to specify the number of versions you'll be backing up, and you can save the configurations. So that's about the DHCP module. And then we get into the IPAM module, so, or the IP address manager. So it welcomes you with rich visualized dashboard. You can see the subnet usage patterns, like what are all the top subnets, and the IP usage trends, like how many available IP addresses, fixed IP addresses, and active IP addresses. And you can see the device profile in your network infrastructure. So what are all the type of vendors associated with your network infrastructure? You can have a visual breakdown of that. And then if you get into the lease menu, you can see the leases behind particular subnet. So if you get into the IPAM module, so here's the dashboard. And if you get into the leases menu, you can see the DHCP leases for a particular subnet. And so if you click on a particular IP within this subnet, you can see the lease history of a particular IP. So here in the lease history, there are so many contextualized information over here wherein you'll see if this particular IP has any DDNS relations associated with any particular domain. You'll get to see all the DDNS relations over here. So this is not the general DNS relations. It is only if you have enabled DDNS for a particular domain. And if this IP address is leased out for that particular domain, you'll get to see this DNS relations. And you can see how this particular IP address has evolved over time and what are all the MAC addresses of the host associated with it for a particular lease period. So all that you can have, these are like metadata information associated with this particular IP over time. And you can see the DNS queries to this particular IP. So whenever this IP was associated with these domains, it has received following DNS query counts. So you can have a visual graph that depicts the DNS query, hourly query load received by this particular IP over time. So you can customize the time window and you can view the hourly query report. And you can see the device profile, the visual breakdown of the various types of devices associated with this particular IP. So you get to access all these kind of complex information. And then these kind of information are very much useful for change management or troubleshooting. So this will help your network admin to backtrack and isolate an infected device or isolate a particular, help you associate an upgraded server that was disconnected from the network and replace it back to all with all its associations in the network. So yeah, that's about the lease history. And here with the VLAN menu, you can access the IP address inventory behind this particular VLAN. You'll get to see the type of IPs within this VLAN, and then you can see the VLAN usage, the number of IPs in the subnet. You can always have a quick visual stats about the utilization patterns in under that particular VLAN. And finally, you can get into the Manage IP menu to see the IP address inventory behind a particular subnet. So this shows the various type of IP addresses within the particular subnet. So this gives you how many reserved IP addresses are there and how many active IP addresses, free IP addresses are there within a subnet. And this main plot gives you the subnet usage capacity. So whenever your admin sees if the IP address space of a particular subnet is overutilized, they can create new subnets to support such overutilizations. So this helps in effective capacity planning, and even in the event of an IP address conflict, and if a particular host is unable to join the network, in that case, your network admin can click on any free or available IP address. So we'll get into a different subnet now. And if you, so you can click on any free IP address over here, and this will directly take you to the host page. So I'll show it over here. So we have the Manage IP module. So any free or available IP address. So this is an available IP address. So this particular host is unable to join the network. In that case, you can click on any available or free IP address, and this will directly take you to the host page where you can assign that particular IP address to the particular host and have them essential connection with the network. So this way you can easily resolve IP address conflicts quickly in case any IP address conflict arises. So that's about the whole of DDI Central. We've covered almost all the modules on the screen. So as we conclude today's webinar, let's focus on a key insight. With the evolving landscape of network management, it is clear that a comprehensive solution like DDI Central sits at the very heart of digital transformation, converging each remote network site in a distributed Microsoft network into a common IP infrastructure and seamlessly lays the foundation for mission-critical IP communications within each site. DDI Central's ability to manage the two core network services, Microsoft DNS and DHCP, is built on a solid foundation of policy-driven management and automation, making it revolutionary in providing effortless IP address management, high availability, elastic scalability, holistic control, centralized visibility, and advanced security. By integrating the critical network services into a single centralized hub, organizations can streamline network operations, enhance security, and reduce hidden costs to a huge extent. Whether you're managing a small network or large-scale distributed enterprise networks, DDI Central provides the features and functionalities you need to build a robust and a future-ready network. So we've come to the end of the session. I'll take this opportunity to thank you all for taking the time to be a part of this webinar. Right after the session, you'll be directed to our downloads page where you can start your 30-day free trial today. We also have a live interactive demo up and running for you. You can access that in our demo page and you can explore and play around with it. If you have any queries, please shoot us an email at ddi-support@manageengine.com. And shortly after, in a few weeks' time, we are going to release an EHC-based installation for DDI Central to be directly installed on all your Windows machines. So you'll have to wait for a few weeks for that. It's currently undergoing testing. So yeah, once that is available, so you don't need to install it on Linux environments at all. You can directly install in your Windows machines and see how DDI Central plays out. So you can give us your feedback and send us your feedback to our support email. We'll be more than happy to welcome your feedback. So yeah. And this is your host, Akshara, signing off. Thank you. Thank you so much.